Welcome to Capes, Cows and Masks. So we're in a bit of a dry spell at the minute in terms of news, so we've got something special for you on this episode. After a series of delays and drama surrounding the project, the New Mutants finally hits our screens, and we've got some thoughts. And in light of the reception of the New Mutants, we're giving our top 3 most underrated comic book movies that we think you should give another shot. So plenty of controversy on this one. That's all this week on Capes, Cows and Masks. Welcome to Capes, Cows and Masks. I'm Jake, and we've got...
David.
Hello, everyone. Now, we're a bit light on news this week, David. Mm-hmm. It's literally, there's nothing going on.
Everyone's going to see Tenet, so they're too busy to be signing checks and to be making news. They're
exactly.
all rushing back to the cinemas.
Yeah, and the bit of news, obviously, Robert Pattinson... caught the COVID.
Yeah.
Let's hope that's not too serious. The Batman ceased production, but now it has restarted production without Robert Pattinson. So
we were so excited last episode, like, can't wait for
that happens. I was like, are you fucking kidding? Like,
and The Rock actually as well,
and all his family,
So DC is feeling that COVID right now.
It is too much fandom.
Yes.
When they say you have the comic, when you go to a Comic Con, you always get the con flu.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah. They got the fandom
It's
flu.
like fresh as flu. We were told this was virtual, guy. What's going on?
So we thought, there's not much news going on, but there is one bit of big news, and that is that the New Mutants has finally graced us.
I still don't quite believe that.
No.
I think it was a dream.
This film was originally meant to come out in March 2018, right? So I looked it up. I think it had like 4 delays, 4 or 5.
Yeah. They couldn't have taken another one.
I think we should sort of talk about that before we get into this film. The whole saga of this film is pretty interesting.
It's a film in itself.
Yeah, it is. Like, I would love to see the making of, to see, because it'd be in a crazy documentary.
Just Maisie Williams' living room of her like reading her phone. Oh, God's sake!
But yeah, as we know, this is the last X film under the Fox banner, made by Fox. This wasn't touched by Disney, even though Disney technically owned this film.
Yeah.
But yes, last X-Men film in the Fox universe. And it was a weird one because, at this point, we all thought, oh, cool, this is... Fox are doing interesting things. They brought out Deadpool, they brought out Logan, we heard about this New Mutants. They're going to do like this horror thing. So we thought, all right, Fox seemed to have found something at this point where they're trying different things.
Yeah.
And they were working. The hype was actually kind of intrigued for this film. Everyone, the famous Bill Sienkiewicz, his run on New Mutants with Demon Bear, they said they were adapting that, and everyone was like, okay, this is going to be cool. But then the news came out, so Disney were going to buy Fox. So apparently there's all the reshoots that happened so the reshoots were planned to happen because the trailer that was released, do you remember the very first trailer, which was very horror trailer?
Yes, yeah.
And I love that trailer, and did you like that trailer?
I thought it was interesting at that point. But yeah, like you said, I think the biggest thing from that was the people were excited for a superhero horror. So,
exactly. Yeah. And Fox looked at that and were like, oh, they want horror. Let's recut it, reshoot it to make it more horror.
Yeah.
But those apparently never happened.
No.
Because of contracts with Game of Thrones, Maisie Williams and stuff like that. And then Disney purchased Fox, so it got delayed again, the reshoots. And then it got to a point where they couldn't do reshoots because the cast were too old. And, at that age, these kids grow up very quickly. Literally 1 or 2 years can make a huge difference.
Oh, yeah.
So they were like, well, we'd have to reshoot the whole movie. And then, Disney execs were looking over this and were like, well, we don't really know if we like this film. We might want to reshoot it or something like that.
We might want to reshoot it to make it potentially in the MCU. That was coming,
that was the thing. Maybe it's tying it into the MCU, but then they were like, no, don't forget about that.
Yeah.
So this is, it's definitely one of those films that's going to go down in history as one of the most problematic films in terms of like, what is this story behind it? I think going back to the unmade Superman film that Tim Burton was going to do, and the Josh Trank Fantastic Four film and all those type of films. But before we go into the actual film, what do you think about all the story revolving around this film?
I think it's interesting because, like I said, in some ways you hope that it will go into it turned out to be amazing, and everyone, so this big story is cultivated around it, and then it kind of gets a following, kind of like the Snyder Cut of like, we want to see this. And, in some ways then, unfortunately, it turns into more of, a whimper, whereas the story itself was maybe the bigger element than the actual film, which I think was always destined to happen because, it's an origin, it's a beginning film. So it's very hard to like live up to those expectations of people then saying, oh, well, it could be this, it could be that, they could be reshooting to do this, all that kind of stuff. But I think it just comes down to, what I said originally when this all happened is when Disney was buying Fox, I was like, look, you just need to either put these under the rug and forget about them because it's going to confuse people, or just release them straight away, just put them out there. Because if, the conversation, a lot of it was Disney was deciding where they wanted the future of the X-Men to go. Obviously, they very much wanted to be an MCU, mutant-led story, how they were going to do that. So they have these two stories and films that kind of get in the way of that. So to me, it was just like, well, either just throw them out there and put them out there for people to see so they can forget about them, or say, unfortunately, you'll never see these, which has happened to films in the past. So, and I think, again, we'll get into it later, but seeing the film, it proves even more. You're like, there was no reason to really delay this so much. This probably would have been maybe more positively received if it hadn't been for the delays. So, yeah, I think it's just testament to where studios do interfere so much when they look at something and go, oh, this is really good elements in some aspects, but we could make even better. So it's kind of where they become a bit too greedy, where they like certain elements of it and they want to play up those elements and they want to reshoot it to make it even better so they can potentially make even more money. And I think when you go down that route, I think this film is a testament then to how that can go very badly. So put your content out there, see what works, and then make a sequel or another film based on what people like. Don't try and like rejig the original movie until it becomes something completely different. I think that's the biggest takeaway.
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I'm also, as you know, I'm a supporter of director's cuts.
Yes.
And feel as if directors should ultimately get to show the vision they had in mind.
Support the Boone cut.
Release the Boone cut. But the thing is, I think we did see the Boone cut.
Exactly, yeah.
I don't think he did say, it is released as we sort of intended it to be released.
Yeah.
We'll get into the actual film in a second. But, I mean, in speaking with the whole Disney thing, I think if the contracts were different, they would have done things differently. But under contract, this film had to be released in cinemas.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think a lot of it was because they have this slate of MCU movies perfectly, this film goes here, because we're targeting this type of audience, blah, blah, blah. They really didn't know where to chuck this film.
Yeah.
It was like, well, they were like, where can we make maximum profit? But I was thinking, well, just release it anywhere because any profit is good profit because you haven't spent a penny on this film.
Yeah.
Granted, you spent $72 billion on Fox, but you've acquired a lot more than just New Mutants.
Yeah. The idea of being like, oh, well, we don't want to put it too close to Deadpool or to this film because there's a similar film coming out in 2 weeks' time, blah, 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 and all that kind of stuff. It's like, why does it matter? Because if it was normal circumstances, then Fox would see that as, oh, that's great. We're going to have our superhero film go up against this one and they'll be rivals. So, like you said, it's weird that Disney saw it as oh, well, we have to move it because we don't want it to clash with this other film. It's like, audiences, I think, are smart enough to know that, like, they're not going to watch that and go, oh, this is the latest MCU film. It's like, no.
I think, before maybe that was the case, but now audiences are pretty savvy.
Yeah, exactly.
There's the internet for starters. But yeah, I think people know that this film is not an MCU film. Just general tone of it as well from the trailer, where it was like, this is not MCU film. Of course it's not.
Yeah.
Look at the tone of what they're going for. Like,
yeah. And
so
I don't think Disney, like I said, people were throwing around Disney Plus. Like I said, when
it
it's
would
such
never
a
go on
horror,
Disney.
it would never fit it.
Even as seeing the film now, it's got horror elements. It's not straight up horror, but it does. It doesn't live on Disney Plus. That film, I don't think. Hulu, yes,
Yeah.
because they own that now, or
Yeah.
at least 60% of it, or something like that.
Yeah.
So just release it on Hulu, and I think that was a bigger rumor at one point was that they were considering of just releasing it on Hulu rather than releasing it in cinemas, but they couldn't. They had to release it in the cinemas, and then COVID pushed it back again. So
yeah, it's been a tough one for the old.
it has, but it's been tough, and then it came out, so it's finally out there, and then man, oh man, did this film get slated. Like, I saw some comments saying worst X-Men film ever.
Yeah.
This is disastrous. People giving it 1 stars. And I was thinking, oh no. Like at the same time, I was kind of thinking, well, I wasn't expecting it to be great, and I thought I'm going to go see it anyway.
Yeah.
But this doesn't look good. And then I saw it and I was like, well, hang on a second. So, because I know you had similar feelings as well. What is it these days with this straight up visceral attacking things now? Because I do believe some of these critics, and I, quotation criticism of these films is very harsh.
Yeah.
And some of it rather hateful as well, but unnecessary.
Yeah.
So, I mean, where do you sort of land on that? And
yeah, I have like I said, I've looked at stuff like this and I'm always fascinated by it. Like, years ago, I wrote about it in uni, like, the people's relationship with critics, and it's still quite the same. People will be like, oh, well, critics are not real fans, all that kind of stuff. And sometimes you can be like, oh, like, that's just people complaining. But then other times in examples like this, you can understand why people have that opinion that they don't feel connected with critics. Because a lot of the time it becomes sometimes very politicized and not about the film at all. And that's the way I saw this. I was like, this isn't about New Mutants. This is about, one element of it. I think, was it, I'm trying to think of the website now. It was something like Culture Club or something like that. They were saying about how they would not go see New Mutants and they wouldn't review it because there was no screeners put out. There wasn't press screenings put out. And they were like, we are not seeing this film.
I think it was Screen Rant or something like that.
Yeah. And they were like, so they obviously painted this thing of, and then they're even bringing into the conversation then of, it's not safe to go to the cinema, so we don't believe we should be reviewing New Mutants and that kind of stuff. And I think that's an unfortunate thing as well. It's a very different situation in America. So obviously New York and LA, a lot of those cinemas haven't opened, where a lot of the press and critics are based. So when you look at the Rotten Tomatoes score, it's only actually based on, I don't know about now, but originally it was based on about 35 critics, whereas usually you're talking about 300 or something like that. So I think that affects it as well, is that obviously then if there are a majority of 30 people saying bad things, then it's just going to seem like a bigger thing. Whereas if it was only 40, 50 people out of 300, it might have not seemed like as big a deal. But yeah, it does seem to be the politics of it as well. And I don't mean to get into too much of this whole like, oh, people are, Disney buy off critics. I've never believed in that.
No,
I think
that's a bunch of rubbish.
It's complete BS. But I do kind of...
I'm sure critics would love to get paid by Disney.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think there is an element of all the delays, all the build up to this film. I think a normal audience member, like I said, doesn't know much about that. So they go in and go, yeah, that was fun. But I think the critics do go in with this expectation of, oh, well, they've recut this film. They've done all this. They've delayed it this long. It must be good. It's the last hurrah for the X-Men.
Or it must be bad.
Yeah. So I think they go in with all this ideas and they want it to fail a lot of the time, because
a lot of the time they go in already knowing they're not going to like this film.
Exactly, yeah. And I think that they do make vendettas to films. And like I said, not so much what we'll be talking about today, because we're talking more about comic book films, but it does happen with a lot of other films. And whether an element, like I said, I don't believe in the whole Disney buying people, but it might be an element of, this is from a bygone era now, we want to see MCU X-Men, we don't like this kind of thing. I think that might be an element of it as well.
Yeah,
because there are a lot of online critics which are a part of Rotten Tomatoes now, which might be quite fanboy in some as well.
Yeah. I mean, there is an element of like do we care about this universe anymore?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And but I don't think you should go into a film with that. I've never really understood going into a film with already this sort of baggage of like, oh, this film's going to be shit because it's been recut and stuff like that. And if it's been reshot, it means it's bad because there was problems with the film. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So they've already got all, like you said, all these expectations of how this film should be.
Yeah. My source at Disney told me that the Disney execs didn't like the cut of it, so therefore I might not like it.
The cut of it,
yeah.
Disney execs didn't like this film, which means it's bad.
Yeah,
it's
exactly,
like,
so.
no, it's just some people just thought, maybe that needs tweaking and that needs tweaking.
The same execs also thought that the ending to Fantastic Four was good. So, like I said, how much can we trust these people?
Exactly. So, art is subjective at the end of the day. Look, I'm not saying that any of these critics' opinions are invalid. You are perfectly entitled to feel what you're feeling. I just feel some of it was, like you said, a bit of an agenda already going into it, thinking whatever.
Yeah.
But enough of that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the actual film.
Yeah.
The New Mutants.
What is this place?
This isn't a hospital. It's an haunted house.
This is an interesting film because, as I said at top, it's not as bad as everyone's saying out for be, but it's also not. It's not a great film. It's okay. I found most of the time I was going, it's fine. It's fine. Like, definitely not the worst thing ever made. Not one I'm going to be rushing to see again. I have to say though, but there is my overall picture of the film is that I did like the story. I did like the interaction between the characters. I thought some of the chemistry was good between them, especially Maisie Williams' character and the lead.
Yeah, is it Danny?
Daniela, something like that. I thought their relationship was really well done. And also I think it's the first lesbian relationship we've seen in a comic book film, if I'm not mistaken. I thought it was handled quite well.
Yeah.
And then Anya Taylor-Joy's character, I thought she stole the show. I thought she had so much charisma. She dominated the scene. All the visual effects with her soul sword were really cool. So I thought all that element was really good. All the horror elements I did like. But what I kept sort of thinking throughout this film is, I really like this. And then it just sort of veers off somewhere else and it doesn't follow through. And I just kept on saying, I want more. Like, give me a bit more. And the best way I can describe this film is that it's like a really good Netflix film or like a really good first 2-3 episodes opening to like a series or something like that. Like a really good, strong pilot.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's sort of my overall thoughts about the films. I didn't really pay too much attention to like the score or anything because I just thought it's fine. Like most of the time, nothing grabbed me. No, but it was an enjoyable watch, to a certain degree. Yeah. What are your sort of overall thoughts of it?
Yeah, like I said, I definitely agree. I don't think it's like, I think for me it was good, but like I said, not great, not amazing. But again, maybe into the realm of like okay, but I think for me it's just some personal elements that I quite enjoy. So that's just where it like maybe lapsed over a bit more into like the 3-star good sort of category. So I didn't have as much problems with the sort of, to me, because I saw it so much as like an origin film and I knew that obviously they wanted to create this as a franchise, then I was a bit more forgiving of where they didn't go there with certain elements like the horror elements or the dynamic of the characters, because I understood well, you made this film with the idea of we could expand this in the future. And I think that they've done that a lot with other superhero films in the past. So I felt that, say, again, with something like Thor or something, people could watch that first film and be like, oh, people really liked the fantasy sci-fi element of that. And let's build on that in the sequels. Guardians, oh, people like that kooky, crazy element. Let's apply that to Thor and let's make that a bigger thing. So I felt in this film that they didn't go there too much because they were cautious about how much people will like it, but there's the room to do that in the sequels and future ones, which we know unfortunately now won't be possible. But again, I didn't want to judge that film on the basis of like, oh, well, they didn't go there, because I knew that the context of the film is that they wanted to kind of thing. But yeah, for me, the strongest element was the cast. I think the performances are really good. Like I said, Anya Taylor-Joy was really good. I think Maisie Williams I was quite concerned about, because there's that kind of ironic thing that the two Stark sisters from Game of Thrones end up as the two sort of main leads in these X-Men films that got left on to Disney from Fox. And because, Sophie Turner sort of didn't have a great performance in Dark Phoenix, I was a bit like, oh, is Maisie Williams going to do well in this? It's quite a difficult character, Scottish, she transforms into a wolf. But yeah, I thought she was really good. And yeah, I thought the entire cast did like a very good job. I liked the darker elements of it, and I did appreciate the story. I think my main problems was the pacing. I felt that it was building up to something a bit more climactic and a bit more of a threat. So I felt that the Demon Bear was going to be this big four, but I thought that was building up in a kind of way of, say, like Raven in the Teen Titans, and how she has like her father's like trapped inside, and this the whole thing of like, don't let the demon and the devil come out because he'll take over the world. I thought it was that kind of thing.
But this is why I thought this would have been great as a series, because like this would have been like the first sort of 2-3 episodes, and you build to the series finale for the Demon Bear, and it's kept on being hinted at.
But it also, like said, comes to that idea of, I thought the Demon Bear would be something that Danny Moonstar is trying to stop, and then he comes out and he wants to consume the world or whatever. But then it actually turned out, no, it's just her fear, and like the Demon Bear doesn't actually really exist apart from in her mind and in her powers. And I was like, oh, that kind of takes away the threat of the entire thing, because it is orchestrated completely by her.
I also thought the way she was able to control the Demon Bear was very quick.
Yeah.
It just sort of happened like, all of a sudden, because throughout the entire film, you've been sort of led to believe that she has just discovered her powers. She doesn't know how to control them yet. And then this monstrous thing happens, and then all of a sudden, she can control it.
Yeah.
And I just thought I didn't see any training, any build up to of her failing to be able to control the power.
Exactly, yeah. And that's where I thought that her power worked for all the other characters. I understood, Ileana's sort of demons and, Wolfsbane's or like the priest guy. I thought all that worked because, like I said, she's bringing out all these dangerous elements which are affecting
They're all
them.
their own fears and stuff.
Exactly. Yeah. But I felt that that's why that was a bigger signal to me that the then main threat should be something existential, something not in her control. Because then she can still have that moment of being like, I'm going to overcome my fear. But it shouldn't be just solely, this is my fear, I can control it, it's gone. It should be that, like, this is something that's affecting everyone because it's come from, and that's why I said about Raven, it's something that's come from a darker world and it wants to take over the planet or whatever.
Exactly, and the fact that they have to come together to defeat it, sort of thing.
Exactly, it's not so much like, oh, we need to support her just to calm her down and make it go away. The only element I will give it credit for, though, is that I did like that it opened with, my father told me there's a good bear and an evil bear in everybody, and it ends in the same way. And I thought, you know what, that I can see what, was it Josh Boone, is it? Or?
Josh Boone, yeah.
I can see what Josh Boone was doing here. I do appreciate that the film did go there and that it was like, no, we're going to have this more character-driven ending, and that she ends the film in the same way so that everyone has a good bear and an evil bear. And I was like, you know what, that is kind of nice to end it on that way and to make it that it was just this personal journey for her. So I liked it at the end and just that end narration. But like you said, it was just the moment in which she comes up to the bear and controls it, and they're all just running around and she's passed out for like 20 minutes. All of that was just a bit messy. But
yeah, I think everything they were trying to do in this film, I thought was good, like what their intentions. Yeah. It's just the execution of it at times just felt flat.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know whether that was the directing or maybe the actual script itself and how or the edit. I did feel the edit was weird at times because I did feel as if you explored maybe this certain character's fear and then all of a sudden you're somewhere else and we're talking about the Doctor now and her role, and then I have a problem with all the connections as well because it seemed a bit too much. At times, I just felt like, because I don't know if you noticed, but there were flashback scenes of kids in a hospital.
Yeah.
Those are scenes from Logan.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. I was like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
Yeah, yeah.
one of Jake's favorite X-Men films is
So
showing up here.
already, as soon as I saw that, I was like, so it's part of that universe and it takes place after Logan. Is that what this is? But then they're also alluding to Professor X, and I thought, well, and another school that's active right now, and I thought, well, at that point in the time, there is no X-Men at all. They're all sort of dead, but then I was thought, man, this is the fucking X-Men continuity
exactly,
again. Like, this is just all over the place.
I kind of read that though as that was pre-Logan, because the footage we see in Logan is kind of something you assume has been filmed over like several years.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that like if they are going with that timeline, that it's when Professor X hasn't had his seizure and everything is kind of okay. But like you said, that universe has got a very messed up timeline.
Yeah.
But I think they kind of do it
I
in.
dare someone to try to watch that universe chronologically.
Yes. I think the idea kind of still works in the like, oh, the Essex Corporation, and they just want to get
Mr.
that
Sinister,
exactly.
it was hinted at, and it would have been very interesting to see what Fox could have done. I think it definitely could have spawned another franchise.
Yeah.
All I will say, as well as a major horror fan, is I did really like the horror elements of like going into somebody's fear. I found especially terrifying Ileana's fear of those mass things, and almost like Slender Men sort of things. And I thought all those elements were really creepy. There was some really good, tension build-up moments. The scene with Cannonball when he's in the laundromat, and when he goes against the hand coming out. Thought that was really creepy. So it definitely has a lot of potential. This film to be something great, unfortunately. But as a film itself, it's okay.
Yeah, and like
it's okay.
Yeah, like I still. Like I said, the positives for me, like I said, is the cast. I really enjoyed Anya Taylor-Joy. I thought it was like, at first, I was like, this is going to be quite difficult with the puppet thing. When I saw it in the room, I was like, ooh, but she pulls it off. I thought it was really fun. And I actually enjoyed, seeing, is it Lockheed, is it? Or,
Lockheed, yeah.
At the end, like, I thought, like, that worked quite fun. That was, and I thought this is going to be quite hard to buy into in this universe that you saw set up. But it did work at the end when he comes through and he's helping her fight the demon bear. And I thought the puppet stuff did work quite fun because Anya Taylor-Joy is such a good actress. Like you said, with the horror elements, I thought the pool scene worked really well as well.
Yes.
I thought that was a great moment. We have the alarm going off and the doctor's kind of like, oh no, something's happening. And I thought that entire hospital scenario works really well. And the idea of like, you need to stay here because you're New Mutants and you've just, discovered your powers. I thought all of that worked quite well. And like I said, the fact that they are teenagers and they're bouncing off each other, the great LGBT representation, and not even the fact that it's just like a big, romance in a mainstream film, but it also goes in, it has the kiss, it has them connecting.
It commits to it, and it commits well, as I said. I thought it was done very well.
It's not a Disney kind of like, oh, look, at the end of Rise of Skywalker, some background sort of thing.
It also felt key to the story of what they were trying to tell, and further building the relationship and chemistry of all these characters. I felt it was vital, and it worked well.
Yeah. So I really enjoyed that element. I thought the Maisie Williams character, I thought it worked really well as well with the whole religious aspect and the fear of the how they have marked her. I thought that was good. And like I said, with the pool scene, I thought it's good when you have elements like that in horror where you have a what's the sort of word where they sort of divert you into believing
she's somebody else.
Yeah, so it's like, oh, Ileana's in the pool. It's like, oh, she was never in the pool, etc. And I thought that worked really well because again, you bought into it because Ileana kind of was this seductive character, and there was that flirtation between her and Sunspot. But yeah, I just really enjoyed the performance from them. It was a bit on the nose sometimes when she saw saying like, oh, you're gonna like curse me with your Indian, accept, curses and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, it's a very like strong Russian stereotype. So I still loved the interaction between the characters, their relationships. I bought into the whole like when they're having fun, and I liked how Magic is sort of like, at the beginning she was like, yeah, you can go through, and she like runs into the sheet, the barrier and all that kind of stuff. The action I did enjoy. I thought it was fun. I think, like I said, took its liberties a bit. I don't know why Sunspot took so long to just like shoot fire at the demon bear, but
budget.
hey-ho. But yeah, like I said, I had fun with it.
And I'm sorry, but all the budget went on Ileana Soul Sword.
Yeah,
that you could tell because that shit was dope.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was great. It was great moments when she did have the arm, and it came across her. So yeah, I had fun with this, and like I said, I just completely disagree with worst X-Men film ever because, like I said, because Dark Phoenix is awful, and like I said, X-Men Origins Wolverine, like I said, his claws don't even look like he's on his hand.
Yeah,
for God's sake.
yeah, those, and I put this one above The Last Stand as well.
Yeah, because at least, like I said, you're not offending, a lot of people in terms of the source material as much kind of stuff. So,
although there was, I don't know if you saw, there was a bit of controversy with one of the original creators.
Yeah, they spelled his name.
His name wrong. Ooh, Disney better sort that out quick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, again, I had fun with it. It like I said, I didn't have massive expectations because I knew it was an origin kind of film. I thought it was fine. I look forward to watching it again in the future, but like I said, I'm not in a rush to rewatch it.
Yeah.
But I did think they ended in a way that would have built up to something exciting. But like I said, hopefully another studio does something similar, etc. And I do hope they do something with the characters of the New Mutants, because I think if you are going to be like, hey, these new, mutants in the MCU, the New Mutants might actually be a good way of maybe not introducing that. Obviously, you want to see characters like Cyclops, etc. But I think they have got an appeal there because they are the New Mutants.
They are. But I just can't see Disney doing that. Not for a long time.
No, yeah.
Because like you said, when they do bring the X-Men in, which is still considerable years away, I think, they're going to focus on the main team.
Yeah. Like you said, maybe a TV series.
TV series, I think, would work best.
Yeah.
Okay, then. So that's our review of the New Mutants. So we're going to give it a rating now. So we were thinking about how we're going to rate this. What should we use as a rating on this show? So we thought capes, cowls, and masks. Mm-hmm. So David, what are you going to give this?
I'm going to give this a cape and a cowl. So I think that, like I said, it's not amazing, but I didn't feel it was awful. So for me, it's in the middle. So cape and a cowl.
I think I'm... Can we do halves?
Can you have half a cowl? Can Batman walk around with half a cowl? I suppose if you're like a James Bond villain, then you could have like half
cowl, the new one's got.
Yeah.
No, I won't do that. I won't cheat. I'm gonna give this a cape.
Okay.
Just a cape.
Yeah.
But I still
on the higher side, a longer flowing cape.
Yes, on the like a Superman sort of touching the ankles cape.
Yes, yeah,
yeah. On the higher side of cape, because it's not I don't think it's a bad film. It's not a bad film. It's an okay film. It's fine.
Yeah, that works. Yeah.
No more swords. No more weapons. No more systems. No more. No more superpowers.
Okay, then. So we're going to go into the final bit of the show now of capes, cowls, and masks. And we were thinking, right, so there's not much news going on. What are we going to do this week apart from review New Mutants? And then the topic came up about all these critics slamming New Mutants. And then, Dave, you came up with the idea of, why don't we talk about our most underrated comic book movies?
Yeah, I think it's always a contentious thing, like I said, with fans and with critics. And you often get, I don't like how they adapted that or that they did this different. But like you said, with New Mutants, because it's so specifically critic-based and, the Rotten Tomatoes score, I think it is interesting when you get fans versus critics, especially with certain properties and certain films, without giving spoilers as to what will come, because they are often very divided. And critics are looking for maybe other things the fans aren't.
Exactly. And when we decided to do this, so what I'm going to explain the rules here, people. So we decided to base it on the critic score of Rotten Tomatoes, and it has to be under 60%. So it needs to be a rotten score, basically.
Yeah.
And when I was sort of researching, seeing what movies had low scores and maybe what films I quite liked, I always found that there always was quite a big divide. I found that if the critic score was low, then the audience score tended to be at least 20 or 30 points higher. Maybe films that were like 30% were like 60% for the audiences. So we basically picked 3 each films that we think are very underrated and think people should maybe give another chance.
Yeah, that's it.
So I'll start this one off because you started our last one.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah,
I'll start this one off. So my number 3 is a Marvel film by Fox, and it's not an X-Men film. And no, people, don't worry, it's not Fantastic Four. And that is the 2003 Ben Affleck Daredevil film.
Ooh, controversial.
Controversial indeed. Now I'm going to cheat. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to pick the director's cut. Now I do consider this underrated because most people did miss the director's cut because it came out with the DVD release and then later came onto Blu-ray. Totally understandable if they missed that because the theatrical version, even I will say, is not good. Like there's some weird things in that film. But the director's cut, I think people should give it another shot because it's got 30 minutes of extra footage. And, you know, in a film that's over 2 hours long, I think 30 minutes is quite a substantial amount of footage.
Yeah.
It adds so much more layers of Matt Murdock's case against the Kingpin, of his ongoing court case of, you know, this guy who's been set up to look like he's murdered somebody when that was actually the Kingpin and all that. And all that builds up to when he finally fights Kingpin at the end.
Yeah.
That he isn't just in the theatrical version. You're like, oh, he got arrested for losing to Daredevil.
Yeah.
Like you thought, where's the big thread here? But then in this director's cut, it adds all that. So it adds this extra thread. It also gives the violence a lot more Frank Miller-esque type. Frank Miller did one of my favorite run on Daredevil in the 80s, which the TV show perfectly adapts. But this film loosely adapts some things. And in 2003 as well, this is before Christopher Nolan's Batman Begins, right?
Yeah.
So this was, I think, one of the darkest superheroes we had gotten.
Yeah.
So, you know, 2003. So I was still like, I was quite young. I must have been like 11. Yeah, he was 11. And seeing this guy, a blind guy, jump around and, you know, kill people as well, you know, and brute, like, you know, when he throws one of the guys on the train tracks and he doesn't save him.
Yeah.
And he's in the nightclub. It's all dark. He's throwing his batons about and just crushing people's teeth and breaking glass on their head. In the scenario as well, the environment, it's all very dimly lit. So for me, I was like, wow, this is so dark and edgy. And it was so different to seeing the Spider-Man films at the time, which was so colorful and vibrant. And then X-Men were a bit darker, but there still was this playfulness to them.
Yeah, exactly.
While Daredevil was straight up, you know, brutal. You know, and it was.
Is it actually like a 15 or like?
It's a 15.
Yeah.
And then it's the theatrical cut was a PG-13,
Right.
but the director's cut is rated R.
Right.
Because of all the extra grittiness and violence to it. And it also removes the sort of romance elements of the film as well.
Oh, okay.
Now, this film is still not without problems. After rewatching it, I was like, okay, it's still got, like, the suit is awful. Like that zip-up biker suit, I wasn't too sure what was going on there. Jennifer Garner is horribly miscast in this film as Elektra, and then you have that weird, tonally off playground seesaw fight, and
the execs thought, let's give her her own film.
Because she was obviously at the time, you know, it's Jennifer Garner, it's one of those movie female stars that you had to have in the film, alongside Ben Affleck, who at the time was also one of those movie stars that you wanted to
name. So,
so I get what they were trying to do, but it just didn't work for me. However, Michael Clarke Duncan as Wilson Fisk and the Kingpin is so good. He's intimidating. He perfectly encapsulates like the Kingpin of this smooth talking guy that's got everything under control, but when something goes wrong, he just loses it. Like in a fit of rage and just randomly kills one of his guards or like, and I'm just thinking, whoa, this guy is like, he's
Yeah.
It's got the same thing that Vincent D'Onofrio had in the Netflix series, where in a quick moment he just loses it.
Yeah.
You know, and rest in peace, Michael Clark Duncan was also huge. Like, this guy
Yeah.
was a beast. Like,
That's why I never understood in the comics and the cartoons and stuff. It's just like, how does this fat guy like get around and get away with this? You know, like running out of a building. So in that, it made sense to me. I was like, okay, yeah, he's this jacked, muscled guy.
Exactly.
You know, and Kingpin makes sense to that.
exactly.
Then.
And also, you have to remember, this is 2003, and this is casting a black man
Yeah.
as a white character. So it was interesting that they were doing this then, and they clearly thought, well, he's just perfect for the role, regardless of his race. So I think it goes to show that even then they were you could do things like this.
Coming off after Green Mile, I suppose, wasn't it?
Yes,
So,
as well. And the Scorpion King.
Yeah.
Remember that?
His other famous role.
But yeah, so I do enjoy this film. Some of the fight scenes are really well done. I do like Joe Paniatelli, I think his name is, who was in the Bad Boy films. He plays Ben Urich, who's also really good in this film. John Favreau is Foggy, is actually the comic relief, and he brings the breath of comic to this gritty story.
Yeah.
Colin Farrell. It's such a weird role for him.
It's strange.
It's so
You're
strange.
talking about the violence. I was just like, they kill a granny in this film. Don't forget that.
With a peanut.
Yeah.
And like his first, like I told you, his first line in this film is "More peanuts, please."
Yeah.
After he just killed this lady. So yeah, it's a very weird role
in
for
an
him.
Irish accent. I
Yeah,
believe, as well.
it's he's so over the top. Like it was really weird because tonally it just didn't work with what Kingpin was like. You had this guy who was sort of calm, composed, but could still lose it, and then you had this Zack, wacky, zany, just guy that just kept, and he was doing all these little. I remember he like snarled at a pigeon in the film. I was like, why?
It's also early on that, like you said, the Spider-Man films always had the restraint until 3 of having the one villain, and that film, like I said, was then the first kind of like Aquaman. They're like, oh, we got the main villain, and
and then like the side villain,
and then you got the second Saw one. So yeah, that was one of the first films to do that as well. We're like, oh, we got 2 villains, working alongside each other, etc. And yeah, the thing that always stands out to me in that film, because I haven't seen it since I was like 12 or 13 or something. But I remember watching it being like, oh my God, should I be watching this? This is so violent kind of thing. And I remember thinking, oh, Daredevil is this really adult dark. Because I remember even the scene, it's not that grim, but, him becoming blind is quite graphic in some way. Because I remember being like, oh my God, what, it's quite frightening. And
where's that? And also I thought the actual origin in this film of Daredevil, they nailed.
Yeah.
Like they got it perfect to, his dad being the boxer, his dad also being corrupt and having to do things, for money, and then, not falling on the last fight for all of that, they nailed.
And the religious aspects was still quite a big part of the
it's
character.
very part of it because he is Roman Catholic, and that is significant to the character of Matt Murdock, and and also his story arc in this film of like at the beginning where he is a bit he's got sort of no remorse, and he's really injuring people and not necessarily killing them but leaving them to die. And then there's one point where the kid sort of, he sees him, he's like, oh, don't hurt me, and he's like, I'm not the bad guy. And then he goes through that story arc of, by the end he has the opportunity to kill Wilson Fisk, but he's like, no, he's like, I'm not the bad guy. So,
exactly.
So I actually think it's a strong character development for him.
I always remember, on the point of Bullseye, I was going to say though, is that moment. And I think it was funny because around the same time, well, it might have been a bit after, but that film, Adam Sandler film came out, Mr. Deeds, which had this guy who played one of the executives or whatever. But in that film, he plays the father, is it of Jennifer Garner? And he gets killed with just the cane sort of like going through his chest. I remember again as a kid being like, oh my God, so just like throwing it like directly in and like dying that way. I was always like, sort of taken aback by moments like that. But yeah, my memories of this, like I said, is only from a kid and just seeing reviews and people lashing into it since, and sort of having the idea of, oh, well, I won't watch Elektra then because that looks very bad.
That is, I can't defend that at all. and in the Daredevil film, I can't defend Jennifer Garner's Elektra because it just doesn't work, and a lot of Bullseye just doesn't work as well. But everything else, if people like the character Daredevil, please like give it another shot. The director's cut, and you might be pleasantly surprised. I think it's definitely worth a rewatch.
Yeah, I think it's a good show. Like I wanted to revisit it, and one of the bits that stood out to me was that dramatic scene at the end. Where he like,
with the water sprinklers, yeah,
and like it's all showering down is quite dramatic. So yeah, I think it's a fair shout. But like I said, I haven't seen it in a few years, so I can't.
Yeah, I think that had like a 43% on Rotten Tomatoes or something like that.
Okay.
So what's we're gonna go to you now. What's your number 3?
My one is very different, which is like I said, it goes with this theme of just being like the mediocre, so like critics were like, oh, it's just boring and that kind of thing. But I just had fun with this one. I haven't like fully rewatched it in sort of preparation, but I was going through the list and I thought I liked that film, and I remember thinking that at the time. So my one is Cowboys and Aliens with Daniel Craig.
By Jon Favreau.
Yes. Again, I'm not excusing this as like an amazing film or good, but I just thought it was fine. It was fun. And I looked through the reviews for it, which slated it, and they were just like, it's just boring. It's just this and that kind of stuff. And I suppose I can't disagree with it too much, but there's just elements of it I just like. I like that the aliens are mining for gold. I thought that was clever. I like that you got Harrison Ford, which is
yes.
A grumpy cowboy. You've got one of the first appearances of Paul Dano in like a big role, which obviously we will see again in a comic book property very soon. So I thought, him playing that sort of whiny sort of son Western character was quite interesting. You have Olivia Wilde, which again was that kind of time in which she was also appearing in Tron as Cora, in which she was playing these, otherworldly alien type characters. And I thought that, I quite liked that element of the story. I liked, when she's like reborn from the fire and everything. And yeah, I just thought it was from a time in which, Daniel Craig was like more of an upcoming name. So I thought that was quite, exciting. And there's elements to it which I kind of felt was a bit like why I like the 2009 Star Trek. It's that kind of like gritty, dark sci-fi time in which people were like, oh, rather than it being all sort of in the time of Independence Day and like dumb sort of like sci-fi or
movies,
or more like deep space kind of stuff. They were having this more gritty, dark, and I thought that was a good way of you could have an adaptation which made it very much like goofy 50s style aliens and cowboys. But coming off Iron Man again, I just thought there was a fine follow-up for Jon Favreau. I just enjoyed the elements of it. I thought they still stayed quite true to the Western elements. I enjoy Sam Rockwell being there. Clancy Brown is in this. Oh, yeah,
Sam Rockwell. I forgot he was in
there. Yeah, so there's a lot of like actors that you think, oh, yeah, I forgot they were in this. But yeah, and I also just like the element of the story, like their family members are sort of plucked out. It's a bit like War of the Worlds in that sense that they're sort of captured for experimentation. So then you have all these characters who are like, that's my wife, that's my grandfather. They want to go rescue them. So I just thought that was endearing. I thought it was like a fun action summer flick. And like I said, I'm not saying that it isn't boring at parts. I like that the Indians come into it. I think that makes a good dynamic where the cowboys sort of against them, but they have to sort of unite against the aliens. And the aliens aren't anything special. They're just these bulky thugs sort of looking, CGI sort of monsters. So they're not that interesting. But again, I just thought it was better. I just didn't think it deserved the flack it got online in terms of saying this is boring, this is rubbish. I thought they were just a bit too harsh to it. Similar to New Mutants. I thought it was fine. It was good. But it doesn't necessarily deserve like a rotten score. But again, I'm not making any big excuses. I just enjoy elements and thought it was quite fun.
Yeah, I think I've only seen this film once.
Yeah,
and probably for good reason.
And actually, the Blu-ray for it is the extended cut. So again, we're going into extended
cuts.
And so it means that if you buy the Blu-ray or watch the Blu-ray, you can only see the theatrical cut if you watch it on DVD. So
all right,
it adds another like 20.
You what,
minutes.
I'll give you the benefit of the doubt, and I will purchase Cowboys and Aliens extended cut. I'd probably get it for like £1 at CEX or something like that. Yeah. I haven't seen this film since it probably came out. I think I didn't even see this in cinemas. I think I probably saw this on like DVD or something like that.
You saw the theatrical cut.
Yeah, I saw the theatrical cut. So I don't know. This film didn't stick with me, and it's not a film that people bring up anymore. No. So I just sort of maybe forgot about it. And then when you told me what I was just like, oh shit, that movie.
Yeah.
Like, I forgot about that.
That's kind of why I wanted to pick it, because I was like, yeah, I don't believe it should go into the the Hall of Fame or anything like that. I just thought that was a decent film that just deserves a bit more respect. Not saying that it is like one of these undeserved classics or anything like that, but I had fun with it, and I thought it was a fun time. So. But like I said, it was because I was maybe scraping the barrel in terms of looking at the other bad ones and being like, no, that is bad.
That is a bad. Yeah, I found that as well. There was what about this film? And I was like, no, that's a bad film.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, maybe there's elements of Fantastic Four that are redeemable. I liked it as a kid, and then I looked into it like, no.
And Rise of the Silver Surfer, even less.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so we're at my number two. My number two. And you're going to see a theme here, guys, with a religious cult theme here. And my number two is Constantine, 2005, the Keanu Reeves flick. Now, I'm going to get this first out of the way. If you've ever read Hellblazer, the John Constantine comics, and you're a huge fan of that, especially like the original 90s Vertigo run, you have every right to hate this film.
Okay.
Like honestly, because it's not faithful in the slightest to the original comics. Like Keanu Reeves is anything but this punk Liverpoolian guy. Like, you know what I mean, who's constantly cussing and and he's got a sense of bad boy to him, Keanu Reeves is a completely different character in this film. He is a more stoic, to himself, slowly dying type of guy who still smokes all the time, but still.
More Keanu Reeves.
He was playing very much Keanu Reeves. It was almost like they looked at what he did in The Matrix and they were like, maybe you do something like that.
Yeah.
This sort of stoic hero sort of thing.
Yeah.
Which John Constantine isn't at all. And it also loosely adapts a story called Dangerous Habits. Very loosely, though. Now, if you forget that this is an adaptation, this is a good film. Okay?
Yep.
So I rewatched it, and I was just like, no, this is... If you can forget that this is a Constantine film, or like the Hellblazer sort of thing, if you can just think this is their own sort of new inception of it, this is actually pretty good. Keanu Reeves does give off his very stoic performance, powerful guy, but he gives this performance where you do feel for this guy that he's got this curse where he can see all these demons and stuff like that, and he's been doing this for years, trying to fight for his soul to go back to heaven. And then Tilda Swinton in this film is amazing, and I don't think I was the only one to think that, because I think it really sets up a precedent for all her future performances, this type of role that she's playing here. And it's a very theological noir type of film, which I love noir type of film. So it resonated with me in that way. And then you add the whole exorcism, demon sort of thing. The visual effects for 2005 were also surprisingly, like after the rewatch, I was like, wow, this holds up. Like the visual effects hold up quite a bit. Like the way they portray hell, I thought that's really cool, and it looks decent. Like he doesn't look like he's walking on a green screen per se. Yeah. So I do have to give it, props for all those things. It makes films like Underworld and Van Helsing look a hell of a lot worse. Yeah. Constantine's mine. I think people should give it another shot. It's a pretty fun flick. You also have what's his name? Shia LaBeouf.
Oh, okay.
He's in this as Chaz Kramer, and then his driver sort of thing. Which again, they take liberties on how the character is from the comics, but still, it's a fun performance, and yeah, it's a fun film. Yeah, it's a fun film. I've liked rewatching it.
Again, I'll have to take your word for it because I have not seen it.
You've never seen this film?
No, like I said, I've seen for some reason, the character of Constantine completely passed me by. It was only till I think that Justice League Dark.
The animated film.
The animated films come out that I actually knew about the character. So when I saw that film come out originally, like I said, I must have just not even known that was a comic book film. I thought it was just
it's not marketed as a comic book film at all. It's but the way this film is marketed, very much like Blade was marketed as this is a vampire film.
Yeah, exactly.
They were marketing this is an exorcism demon type of film starring Keanu Reeves, an action type of film. Well, they weren't saying this is a horror comic book film.
Yeah.
and the horror elements do really work in this, and I do think DC have, I think more than Marvel, have the horror sort of genre nailed. They've got a lot to mine from there, especially like you said with the animated film Justice League Dark.
Yeah,
they could do a lot with John Constantine, Swamp Thing, Deadman, Zatanna, all those sort of horror characters. So I really hope they do something in the future with that.
Does Keanu Reeves actually attempt the Liverpudlian accent?
No,
or is he? No, okay.
It's the Keanu Reeves accent.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, because again, I think did Arthur Darvill play him in the DC Legends of Tomorrow?
No, that's Matt Ryan.
Oh, right, okay.
Matt Ryan, who the series Constantine, the CW one, is actually pretty good.
Right, okay.
And I really like that adaptation of the character. That is definitely, he very much embodied the character of John Constantine.
Yeah. Okay.
This film doesn't do that. But like I said, if you forget it's an adaptation, it's a pretty good flick. It's a pretty good flick.
Again, I think where Keanu Reeves had his sort of Keanu-sance, as some people call it, where he's, turning up in a lot more things now, I have been more intrigued to look back at some of the films you sort of passed you by, because I was just put off by stuff like that, by The Day the Earth Stood Still.
Yes.
It was just like an awful sci-fi film, so I was just like put off by sort of those Keanu Reeves films for quite a while then, so yeah, possibly worth going back to.
Yeah, I mean, it's on Prime, so
exactly.
Go check it out. So we're at your number 2.
So we are going back to the Fox universe, or times of making comic book films, which they can't do as much now. And it is X-Men. It's X-Men Apocalypse. Again, same sort of feelings I've had with the majority of my list. Is just, and it's similar sort of ratings, about a 44%, I think, on Rotten Tomatoes. I just don't feel that it deserves the hate and the criticism as heavily as it got. Again, I think, there are problems with this film. It's not perfect. But when I came out of this film, and I think what's interesting about it is that we've talked previously about how the X-Men films started that group superhero genre kind of thing. They were the first to really try that. And I think that's what's interesting, is that in many ways, the X-Men films were doing, trying things and experimenting, which then Marvel sort of learned from in terms of their mistakes for their Avengers films, etc. So for me, I felt like watching, obviously with First Class, it very much felt like they were sort of rebooting it and going, back to then a new trajectory, but then Days of Future Past changed that up. And that's where Apocalypse was kind of interesting then, because it was continuing in that, but then also trying to set up something separate. But what I liked about it when I came out of it, I was like, how do I feel about this film? Because I could tell as soon as I came out, I was a bit like, that was a bit of a mess. That was quite interesting. But I was thinking about the end of it, and you've got, Cyclops, Jean, etc., all in like their sort of classic looks. And I was thinking about characters like Psylocke and Angel, etc., and the whole climactic end battle. And this is a big part of my list as well, is, with some films, with comic book films especially, like Fantastic Four or Fan Four Stick, whichever you prefer, which is the Josh Trank one. The climactic end or third act of these films can quite often be what loses you. You can kind of be like, okay, I'm kind of with this, and then you just lose it. So for Apocalypse, that's one way I kind of got won over by the end, and that's like similar for my number 1 as well. So I felt that, to me, I came out of it and I thought, that was kind of like a Saturday morning cartoon, and it was goofy, it was a bit crazy. You had all this crazy action, flying characters, loads of different things going on. We're in Egypt, we're doing this. And I thought, yeah, it's kind of like, I'm not going to say it's like the 90s X-Men cartoon, but because the X-Men films have set themselves up until that point of being the first real sort of series in which we would have more than, say, a trilogy, like with Spider-Man, I was like, well, yeah, it's kind of understandable. There's kind of become episodic at this point. I'm not expecting like huge character arcs and huge moments now, because they're like, 6-7 films into this franchise. So I was like, yeah, I'm kind of happy to see that as just an entry in this, episodic saga with big action set pieces and fun action, which I really enjoyed in Days of Future Past. You got a bit more of that still here, where, you had like scenes like with Colossus and Blink and Storm in Days of Future Past, whereas here they have like the fun stuff with sort of Psylocke and Angel and Storm again, so like making a lot of the visual fun stuff that I think makes a good sort of X-Men action scene. So I was willing to forgive a lot of the elements of that because I think it's got a big cast of characters, and I think that they do set them up quite well. I think Cyclops is set up all right. I think that Jean Grey I was fine with in this film. I think it's just the problems are in Dark Phoenix for that character. I enjoyed seeing Jubilee. I wish they kept in the deleted scenes where she used her power to trigger on an arcade machine, but oh well. And I thought that it was a nice...
Jubilee constantly getting the shit stick.
Yeah, exactly. Just sparking something in her hand in a deleted scene, but never actually doing the full fireworks. I thought it was a good finisher for the James McAvoy, Michael Fassbender, and Jennifer Lawrence story. That's how I saw it, and I think they marketed it as like, oh, this is their final film, and that's why I think it was such a mistake to then go, oh, well, we're doing it again with Dark Phoenix. Like, no, you perfectly set up to have Cyclops, Jean Grey, all of those go into the new franchise, and they should have just left James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender in, especially Jennifer Lawrence, because
she phoned it in.
We saw how badly that turned out in Dark Phoenix. So,
well, we saw, but even in Apocalypse, I thought she really phoned it in.
Yeah, she did, but I thought they got away with it a bit more in that film because it was kind of understandable that she was like, I don't want to be in the blue makeup, but because they set up this whole, like, everyone knows her from what happened in Days of Future Past, I was like, okay, I'm willing to buy into that. Again, not great, but I was willing to buy into it. And because the character was hopefully going and they set her up at the end of this mentor character, I thought, yeah, that's quite a good idea. But again, I thought they should have left it there and not had those characters come back. Rewatching it also, I came across a weird plot hole in which at the end, Professor X is like, oh, Magneto, why don't you stay here? You sure you don't? He's like, no, I need to go. I'm like, aren't you a wanted fugitive? Like, at the start, you were like, hiding in like Russia, etc. So
Poland, I think it was.
Poland, yeah. It's like, so why is Professor X being like, yeah, you should stay here? It's not like we have any other dodgy stuff that could potentially endanger us. Let's have a wanted criminal walking around here as well. So as if like what you'd done in Apocalypse didn't make it even worse for himself. But yeah, I enjoy this film. If people say like Apocalypse looks like Ivan Ooze, I enjoy Power Rangers. So,
that's not an insult.
Why not? I think that Oscar Isaac was doing something quite interesting. And again, I think that this is pre-Thanos. I think that they were everyone was talking about, Darkseid, Thanos, Apocalypse were in there as these big blue bulky characters that were going to appear in all these franchises. And I think unfortunately Apocalypse just had, the unfortunate situation of realizing what doesn't work about that character. So whereas Thanos, they could learn from that of like, no, we need to have the actual size of this character. It can't just be like somebody in a suit. And I understand why they did that, and I enjoy like the actual look of him, but he looks a lot better later in the film when he actually like expands in Charles's mind, etc. But again, I just enjoy the set pieces of it. I like the action at the end with the different characters, the different powers. You have like another throwback to the Quicksilver scene with the X-Mansion. So it's just all fun stuff like that, which I enjoy, and just add into the lore, add into the characters, having characters like Caliban and all that kind of stuff. And I think they managed to balance it off quite well, having so many characters. And even you have William Stryker come in here at some point.
And we get that Wolverine scene
exactly.
of the Project X.
Yeah, so to have all of that and still manage to be like a fairly entertaining. Oh, and lastly as well,
Weapon
I think
X, sorry.
some people don't see it... Whereas the 60s is this kind of Cold War espionage sort of film, and the Days of Future Past kind of like adventure around the world sort of film.
Time travel thing,
yeah. I don't think people sort of give it credit for kind of it's an 80s film, and the whole Apocalypse scene where he launches the missiles. I love that scene. I think it's great.
It's a great scene.
So to have
the music as well to go along with that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I
Machines.
love... Yeah. Like you have become, dependent.
Weapons. Yeah.
So, and again, they set up the situation of that really well, that it makes sense. Xavier's tracking Magneto. He finds Magneto, and then he sort of, through Magneto, can see Professor X. I buy into that. But yeah, I kind of saw that then as the moment I was like, oh, they're kind of trying to be an 80s disaster film. So through the whole nuclear war stuff, and they're pulling up all the debris and leveling cities, I think some people saw that as just over the top and stupid, but I was like, no, they're trying to be like an 80s cheesy disaster film. And I think that sometimes gets confused with people. Similar thing happened last year with Godzilla. A lot of people were like, that film's dumb, it's so stupid. I was like, I know, but it's meant to be, because
it's monsters fighting monsters.
Yeah, they're trying to be like a disaster film, and I felt that was trying to do it as well. So So yeah, I enjoy it. And
Yeah, I mean, I echo all your thoughts. I like this film.
Yeah.
I really do like this film. And if
you like the ooze.
I like the ooze, especially as what you said, that I felt it caps off this trilogy really well. Like
Yeah.
the story they set out to tell in First Class, I thought it wraps up here pretty nicely. And like you said, with all the new characters maybe going on, possibly leading up to the first X-Men film that we'd already seen.
Yeah.
Maybe apart from Nightcrawler, but
Yeah.
continuity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But that aside, and like you said, I really like what Oscar Isaac did with this character. Now, going into this film, Age of Apocalypse is my favorite X-Men story arc.
Okay.
Like that, the whole, the big omnibus you can get for like £60. It's got every issue, all the tie-in issues. It's huge, it's epic, it's grand. It's just one of the best things ever. And it's so 90s as well. Very, very 90s X-Men comics. So going into this film, I was so excited to see Apocalypse. And I just didn't get all the hate because I was just like, no, it felt... especially the third act, I felt like it was this big, grand, epic scale.
Yeah.
The power radiating from Magneto, when Apocalypse is saying, feel the metal in the ground, and how he could absorb all metal from the Earth's core. I was just like, damn, that's fucking cool, man. I don't think we'd really seen on that scale before the powers of Magneto and things.
No, exactly.
And Apocalypse, I thought, just was an interesting character, how he's got every mutant power and he can influence all of them and stuff like that. So I thought it was pretty decent. Yes, it has its problems. Of course it does. And, the biggest problem for me would always be J-Lo in this film because I just felt after First Class, it just felt like she didn't really care to be there.
Exactly.
And for me, I need people to be invested in these characters because I love them so much. And I don't need them to love them as much as I do, but I need them to take them seriously.
Yeah.
And I just feel as if, for me, that's shitty attitude to have.
Yeah.
But regardless of that, James McAvoy and Michael Fassbender, I still think it's incredible that Fox managed to cast these characters perfectly twice.
Yeah.
Since, you know what I mean? In the old school and the new school. So, yeah, I echo your thoughts, man. This is a good film.
Yeah.
I don't see the hate that it gets. I don't get it.
Like I said, I think it makes sense in that the percentage is not it's not like 20%, but it is like 44 or something. But yeah, I think you see it a lot on like the worst comic book movie lists and, people talking about, the X-Men franchise has been dwindling for years, etc. And like I said, I just don't get the hate with it on that one. So yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's a lot of fun and there's a lot of elements you can really sort of dig and get a lot out of. And like you said, I think some of the elements, maybe the mistakes they made is the Apocalypse starts the film in like a shrouded hood and he's like walking around, Egypt like some sort of beggar or something. So I was watching it back thinking maybe you should have just started this like he had like a cult following and he's on a throne or something like that from the get-go, not him just wandering around. But that's why I loved the opening of it. I loved that he had his...
Storm with a mohawk.
Yeah, exactly.
Fuck, yes, man. Like...
And at the end, when she has that great moment, we were talking in New Mutants about people taking too long to come to the realization of what they're doing. But, she has a perfect moment in which she's watching what's happening. And she's like, oh, I'm not sure I agree with this, yeah. And then she brings down the lightning and you have that classic shot from above. And I love when they do that sort of classic storm, like bringing down her eyes are sort of like glowing, etc.
And I thought Alexandra Shipp did a pretty good job of Storm as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, so X-Men Apocalypse, good choice, man. I actually like that film.
Yes.
So my number one, the granddaddy of them all.
Yes.
This is the film I think is criminally underrated. Now, a lot of people give this film a lot of shit, especially when it came out. Wow, I think this was almost like the dawn of like the hate field for comic book movies.
Yeah.
Funny I say dawn.
Yeah,
because this film is at a measly 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, and that is Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Yes. Bring it on, haters.
Yeah.
Bring it on, because this movie is you can't take too seriously, and I also people don't take it seriously enough.
Yeah.
Where do I begin with this film?
Dawn of Justice.
Dawn of Justice. So, I mean, I've got my notes here as I was rewatching. I was just typing because I rewatched it. Not that I needed to rewatch it, but I just felt I'm gonna rewatch it again.
Yeah.
And again, I'm using the Ultimate Edition. Okay, so not the version that came out in theaters. This was one that came out in Blu-ray and 4K, the extra 30 minutes of footage and the editing of the film is different.
Yeah.
So certain scenes are at different places of the film, so it just flows so much better. Now, I've got an interesting relationship with this film because this film, without a doubt, was probably the most hyped film I have ever been hyped for, because it included Batman and Superman, two of my favorite characters of all time, and they were sort of going to be sort of adapting The Dark Knight Returns, where Batman fights Superman. My, favorite comic book story of all time.
Yeah.
So me sort of seeing this, thinking I've been waiting all my life to see this film, you know, and it was still crazy to think that in 2016 we have not gotten a film where Batman and Superman are in the same film together. Yeah, which is crazy when you think about it like that, and everything else we got. So a lot of hype for this film, and then when I saw it, I came out to the theater being like, I don't know what I think about this film. Because this film is a lot. I will say that it's a lot of film, film. Zack Snyder throws a lot at the audience in this film. And then after revisiting the Ultimate Edition and spending a lot of time with this film, because I thought, no, I want to try and figure out what Zack is trying to say here. Because I was so confused about what he was doing with these characters. Because he really was breaking the rules when it comes to these characters. And, you know, there's the age-old saying that you need to know the rules before you break the rules. Yeah. Now, at first I thought that was true, but now I'm going to do a 180 on that, because now that I've come around to this, it's like I said on your podcast, this film has become a fine wine for me, that with age, it's getting better and better. And with every rewatch, I'm just finding new things to love about this film. Not like love about this film. Firstly, this is a political film, right? Very, very political. And I think a lot of people got put off by that. Yeah. And there's people who say, I don't like politics in films. And when people say that, I think what they mean to say is, when they say that, they don't agree with those politics in those films. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? So it's not that they don't agree, they don't want politics in films. It's just that it's maybe portraying a political message that they don't agree with. Yeah. That's okay. True. And from the get-go, this film, it says it in the film, every act is a political act. And I think this film does a very good job at pointing towards what Superman represents and what he could represent in our modern-day society. And it's completely true, because everything now we do is based on politics and policies and everything. And what would the world be like if this extraordinary being from another planet came to Earth? Yeah. We wouldn't... Well, most of us wouldn't open him with arms. We would be terrified. We would be scared. A lot of us would be angry. We're going, with racism and everyone being divided at the moment. We're going through that now with our own species. So imagine if a different species came to Earth, and also a species that could easily crush us in an instant. Yeah, I think Zack Snyder wanted to do something really different and show this in a completely different way that we hadn't seen before. And I think if you give it the time, I think it's a really thoughtful film. And the way he also used media, and I truly believe media is a third character in this film. You have Batman and Superman, and the media is telling you to think a certain way. It's the media's view of how they think about how Batman's handling things, or mainly how they think of Superman's handling things, and how Lex is manipulating the media. So even to fool Batman into thinking Superman is a certain way, which then leads on to Batman's agenda of being really a bit of a bigot in this film. And sort of he's become everything he hates by being incredibly, brutal and sort of leaving out the no-killing rule and stuff like that, and doing everything in his power to stop this guy. And it's driven him very much like the style of Dark Knight Returns, where this older, grisly Batman, who I think Ben Affleck plays perfectly in this film. And I think even with all the hate that this film has got, I think most people came out of that film going, Ben Affleck was pretty good. Yeah. Which is funny considering all the hate he got when he was cast.
Yeah, he's a good Bruce Wayne, is what a lot of people said.
Yes, he's fantastic Bruce Wayne. The way his hair is, it's just as simple as that, and the way he carries himself. I just thought he was an awesome Bruce Wayne, and he's my favorite Batman today from this singular performance. I just thought he gave it so much depth and gravitas and worrisome that you could tell he was tired of the never-ending fight, you know, against crime and stuff like that. And he figures that this is the legacy, that he has to defeat this guy. And just everything else about it, like the cinematography done by Larry Fong, I think this is one of the best looking comic book films of all time. Like visually, it is gorgeous. Like, you know, from the visual effects and the cinematography, every frame I think could be a painting of some kind. The score by Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL is insane. Like it's apocalyptic, it's foreboding, epic thing. You know, and I think it's without a doubt one of the most listened to scores since it came out. I've hit, like, it's in #1 in my iTunes. Like, I just listened to that album non-stop. And I understand why a lot of people might have hate for this film, of like the really severe different directions Zack took. And maybe for me, it's because I've read comics my whole life and I'm used to Elseworld stories where creators come on and they want to do something different with the character and it not be part of the main canon per se. And I think that was the main issue here with this film, is that people thought that this could have been the canon of the DC film universe, but it could have been, it still could have been, but Zack wanted to take it in a completely different direction that most people would have thought maybe better suited for Elseworld stories.
Yeah.
That's totally understandable, but it is what it is, and we got what we got. And I just think this is a grand epic scale film. One of the a smart film, I think. I think it's got a lot of plot elements in it, and sometimes it is overbearing. This film is far from perfect. There is things like, you know, the introduction of the League, I thought was handled poorly. Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg's performance, I think everything that they set him up, I think his performance was really good as the character, but he wasn't the character of Lex that we know. But again, it's just a completely different take. Zack Snyder wanted to go for like this sort of Silicon Valley tech sort of genius. And I think he was also trying to saying what these tech guys, or with people with so much money, the influences they can be on us today and how evil they could be. People like Elon Musk, maybe, and other tech geniuses, and Mark Zuckerberg.
Exactly. Well, that's why I respected about the casting originally. I was like, oh, that's quite clever that you've got the guy who played Mark Zuckerberg to then play.
And then there is a bit of his performance from Social Network in BVS. But it's also the themes of religion and themes of the savior, the Messiah character. And the really interesting part of this film I found was the divide of the Superman question, is that people thinking he should be sort of accountable for all his actions and he should be sort of go towards some sort of jury or something, you know. And then you have the other people who are saying he's just the guy trying to help people, you know, and you're trying to implement laws on him. So I don't know. This is, over time, I've just really, really appreciate what Zack's doing with this story. I get it. It's not going to be for everyone because it is very drastic changes, but I appreciate these drastic changes. And I think it's really refreshing because, again, I go back to you have to know the rules to break the rules. Well, us, the audience, we already know the rules. We've seen Batman. We've seen Superman. We know their backstories. We've seen plenty of iterations of them. Let's have something different. Why not? So, I mean, I could keep on talking about this film. Yeah. But I do think in 10 years' time, because even in the 4 years since it's been released, I have seen this film has been growing as a cult following. And more people are coming around to it. Yeah. So I ask people, if you would just check out the Ultimate Edition, give it a second chance, especially with the Justice League coming out. Yeah. I would implore people to give it another rewatch.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting for me is that, you know, like I had a very, similar experience to you with watching this for the first time, but very different. And obviously I didn't have that, you know, like, oh, I love this story. I didn't have that connection like you did. But obviously I wasn't so much coming like, I don't know what to make of that. I came out of it like, I really didn't like it. Like I was watching this film and I was just like, wow, I'm ready to like leave. I'm really not enjoying this kind of thing. You know, this is the film that I had perfectly in my mind because, like you said, it's become a big divisive moment of like fandom when this film came out, and I think that is right, and that's why I've been fascinated by the Snyder cut and the announcement of that, because I do find that it is a really fascinating look at how people react to different forms of media and different cuts and like creatives, you know, seeing through their vision. And I think that expectation is a massive part of it. I think that everyone went in with this kind of, and I think DC is really to blame with this. I don't know if it's Zack Snyder who was part of this, but I think Dawn of Justice is really the wrong way to go. I don't like when films do that. I don't like Warcraft, the beginning,
Yeah.
It's like Captain America, the first Avenger. I hate that kind of like commercial, like, wait for number 2, like the second Avenger and all this kind of stuff. So that's, I never liked the Dawn of Justice, because I was like, if you're going to do Batman v Superman, that's quite a big story.
Just
in
call
itself.
it Batman v Superman.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't need to get, bums on seats with Justice League thrown in there. People are going to watch it for Batman v Superman regardless. But obviously they wanted to set up the idea that they were setting up this cinematic universe. And I think that that's where the expectations come in, is that people go, okay, so you're setting up this DC universe. We're now going to see Batman introduce Superman, these versions of these characters that you're going to go forward, the ones that we know, the ones that we understand. And at that point, I don't think people were used to, like you said, Elseworld stories, alternate realities, multiverses. Like now, I think it could work a lot better and will work a lot better with the Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I think that's why, in my mind, I think rewatching it, I would almost be like, you should maybe recall this Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman, because it is so much his, like you said, his story and his way of wanting this, how he saw it. And I think the unfortunate thing for people is that in Zack Snyder's mind, he had, this is all the Batman and Superman stuff we've had for years, and this is now what I want to see. So you have to kind of watch that film with the understanding and the lore of Batman. So you watch, like you said, you're watching,
I know what you mean. Yeah,
you're watching Batman with the assumption of like, you've been through,
like, who Batman is. Yeah,
yeah, and you know that everything from like the Tim Burton films, like I said, not canon, but in that film, but that's kind of what is assumed as similar stuff has happened in the past. Whereas, like I said, people go in with this expectation of like, well, where is that? I want it, like I said. Whereas Zack Snyder for himself is doing it as a comic book fan, who's somebody who's reading these things and watching these things and going, I want to tell it in this kind of way. Whereas people, because of Avengers and stuff, didn't see it that way. So I think that's where, and it worked for Christopher Nolan. If they did it in more of a advertised in a way of,
but
like,
this is the thing. Like when Nolan did his movies are drastically off the comics.
Yeah, exactly.
Very, very different, and not many people. No, you didn't get people, shouting. Those films are critically acclaimed. Everyone loves those films.
Yeah.
So I just don't know what happened here. Like, and if anything, like, the Christopher Nolan movies are great, and I love them. The Dark Knight's my favorite comic movie of all time. But they still, for me, they don't reach the epicness of this film. I think Zack Snyder truly brought us an epic here.
Yeah.
The Dark Knight films are great, but they do lose a bit of the spectacle. There is a bit of campiness, even though this film, Batman vs Superman, is so serious on so many levels. There is an element of campiness of like, yes, there is a crazy guy dressed up as a bat, running around hitting people. In that type of suit. How is that even possible? How does this car work? Zack doesn't focus on explaining it just is. It's comic books. And I felt that this film was truly the first time I felt DC Comics was brought to life. Do you know what I mean? I felt that with Marvel, with the first Avengers movie. For me, that came out, it was comics out of the page. But this one did it for DC, where I fully felt comics are on screen now. Yeah,
exactly. And I think that's what was interesting for me rewatching it, because I wanted to watch the theatrical cut because I didn't want to feel like, Zack Snyder still approved that sort of cut, and it wasn't like, oh, here's the director's cut that, like I said, it's the ultimate edition, not the director's cut. Is in like, he wasn't happy with that version.
Well, and there was reports of Warner Brothers needed him to trim it half an hour.
Yeah, but
he wanted to release his 3-hour cut.
Yeah, no, but I also, like I said, had a lot of people who said, oh, watch it again. I think you'll, see it differently, kind of thing. And it took me years to do it, like I said, because I was just so put off my initial experience. And I think it was because, like I said, rewatching it, I did enjoy it way more. And like you said, and I'd taken in what people had said, like you said, about it being a fine wine. I'd taken in about people saying about it being an Elseworld story. I'd say, taking in more people were saying about what he wanted to do in terms of commentary of like the God complexes and all that kind of stuff. And
xenophobia and all that stuff.
Yeah, and I really did appreciate that, because I do like my comic book films and blockbusters with more depth and more meaning. So, I did, rewatching this, I did, it went from like a 1 star when I first saw it to like a 3.5 star, because I enjoyed that first 3/4 a lot, because I really appreciate what they were doing for the characters. And like I said, even though in Man of Steel I'm like, oh, it maybe turns a bit too crazy at the end. But again, I think if it's...
Do you think it has the similar problems at the end of this film as well? A bit too crazy?
Well, I'll get into that in a second. I think I appreciate what Zack Snyder did, and that he did that at the end of Man of Steel, because he was setting up at the beginning of this film that would set up the idea of like
Why
Superman is destructive, why Batman doesn't like him. So I was like, okay, I'm willing to buy into that. But I think the problems there is just that you still struggle to sort of embrace Superman as like this big hero when you haven't seen him do much of the spectacle of saving people and, you know, from falling buildings and that kind of stuff. But I still enjoyed the elements of, like you said, when he goes to the Day of the Dead thing and people are putting his symbol on the roof and he's this like deity. And the element I didn't really latch onto before, when I first saw it in cinema, I was like, why is Superman going to like Afghanistan and being this, like, you know, I saw it as this weird, like, oh, look how, you know, edgy and cool Superman is. He's in like, you know, a war zone and all that. I was like, this doesn't feel like Superman. This doesn't feel like DC. But I did like that element then of like, he's like protective over Lois, and he was like, if they're going to do anything to you, I will kill them.
And again, the Ultimate Edition makes that sequence make so much more sense as well.
Yeah,
of why he's there.
Exactly. So I think a lot of people have said, you know, a lot of people enjoy evil Superman than they do normal Superman. So obviously a lot of this film is, you can see that, again, people don't like the Batman like kills people in this, and he doesn't feel like Batman. But watching it through again, I was like,
but he goes through he goes through a story arc that by the end of the film he realizes he was wrong.
Yeah, and I feel that, again, it might be different in the Ultimate Edition, but that does happen a bit too quickly at the end. But again, I felt up until that point,
the Martha scene, you mean?
Yeah. But I was willing to buy into when Alfred said, what was that scene where he said,
turns good men cruel.
Yeah.
Is it that one?
No, when he showed up at the mark, he was like, oh, is this thing we're doing now? And he's like, oh, we've always been criminals. So, and that was the point. I was like, okay, I do get what you're saying now. You're trying to make out that Batman has gone unleashed. He's gone too far. He's driven by, like you said, all that he's gone through. And Superman is doing the exact same thing. He's driven by, he wants to like protect Lois, and he believes that he's buying into this, like, oh, I'm like a god. I'm like respected by all the people.
But he doesn't know what to do with that power.
No.
And I think that's what people had a problem with, is that they didn't see the Superman that they know, the one, and even I will say that in BVS, he's still not Superman yet.
No.
I don't think he's learning what it means to be Superman.
Exactly, yeah.
And he has to combat all this negativity and people throwing shit at him, being like, you're responsible for this and this. You have to take accountability for this. Yeah. And he's just like, I'm just trying to help people.
Yeah. And I think that's the problem, is that in Zack Snyder's mind or other people's mind, they might have been like, oh, we've had too much of Superman like that in the past. But really, we had Superman Returns, which was a continuation pretty much of the Christopher Reeves Superman.
The Donner Superman.
It didn't really go over that well. So I don't think Superman as a character and what he is, you know, like all his history was that fresh in people's minds. So I think what Zack Snyder was doing, he would have done that well if there was, say, like Marvel, you did like Iron Man, and like, you've had 3 films of Iron Man. Oh, now show this negative side of people. But like, oh my God, that's different. I like that. But because they hadn't seen that even original side of Superman since like the 70s, 80s, it wasn't fresh in their mind. They weren't appreciating this alternate take on Superman because they weren't really seeing the original take
I know
recently.
What you mean, yeah.
And the same thing with Batman, I think, because like you said, Christopher Nolan is such a different take on it. So I think it would benefit if it was just Zack Snyder's Man of Steel, Zack Snyder's Batman v Superman, because it is his vision. It is like an Elseworld type story. And yeah, I enjoyed like Wonder Woman's introduction. I thought they actually did that
great.
well.
Yeah.
I enjoyed actually Lex Luthor in this. Originally, I thought he was too kooky, too weird, like putting sweet in the guy's mouth and stuff. But this time I was all in for it. I thought it was good. I enjoyed his performance. I liked the whole like when he was talking about Prometheus and Zeus and all that kind of stuff.
The thing is Jesse Eisenberg did the job well. He did what he was told to do.
Yeah.
I think if people have a problem with Eisenberg's performance, I don't think they shouldn't have a problem with him. I think it's more the writing of his character. But that's just what I think.
But even then, like I said, he's very, you know, even in the Reeves Superman, to me, I know is
what he wants to set up real estate.
Yeah,
that's what that.
But he was always kind of like, he was
flamboyant,
long hair and he was flamboyant and that kind of stuff. So I think some people going off the more sort of Kevin Spacey, sort of like serious angry guy kind of thing. Whereas I think Jesse Eisenberg could turn into that, and by the end of the film, you do see that he could potentially be that once he's had his head shaved and
He's
everything.
going insane, yeah.
But he is playing that sort of more, like you said, tech entrepreneur, young guy sort of at the beginning, which then would transition into the sort of more business, stronger, angrier sort of Lex. But yeah, I think the only thing I struggled with and still do is just that third act. It's just, I just don't understand why Snyder went, yeah, let's do like this Frank Miller stuff, let's do all the Superman, blah, blah, blah. And then let's throw in the death of Superman as well.
As well,
That's
yeah.
a massive
It's a lot of story, yeah.
So that's where I still struggled with that. I enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. I like the epicness of it. It looks amazing. And I think the storyline of it does go somewhat make sense. Like I said, Superman making the sacrifice and everything like that. But I was still a bit like, why would you throw in this massive storyline like thrown in at the end like this? So like I said, I changed my opinion on it completely, but I'm still just torn on that third act because it is just so much thrown in right at the end of it. But
I think, again, I think to really see the full picture, we need the Justice League film.
yeah,
The
and that's
4-hour
thing.
version.
And that's why I mentioned Man of Steel, where you originally see that, you're a bit like, oh, that's a bit crazy at the end. But then you watch Batman v Superman and you're like, oh, okay, I can see how that does lead into that kind of thing. So, so yeah, like you said, I think Justice League will sort of answer that, and that's why I think Zack Snyder's Justice League is an important title for that, because it is
because
his vision.
it is truly his vision, and I think with both Man of Steel and BVS, it is his vision as well. It's his take on these characters. Now, like I said, if you didn't enjoy Man of Steel and BVS, you're probably not going to like Justice League because you don't like Zack's style of filmmaking.
Yeah,
and that's cool. That's cool. The only thing I do ask is that maybe give the Ultimate Edition another shot.
Yeah,
Give it another shot if you haven't seen it since it came out in cinemas.
yeah. Like I said, there are some campy and goofy moments. Even the Martha thing, I didn't even actually have that much of an issue rewatching that. I think originally I was a bit like, that's stupid, but I think the bit that doesn't work is when he's just going, save Martha. But when it's like Lois coming in and saying that's his mother's name, that to me works.
Yeah, for me, that clicks a bit more because I think, this entire film, Batman's been thinking that this is this alien that must be defeated and he's pure evil sort of thing. And this is the first time he's sort of realized, wait,
he's the same as me.
This guy has a mother. This guy has someone that loves him.
Yeah.
And it so happens to be the same name as my mother, who I couldn't save. No. So maybe I can save his.
Exactly, yeah. So yeah. I'm on board with the message. I think it's just the execution of it. Yeah. The way that Henry Cavill played it maybe wasn't the best. Also,
Ben Affleck going, why did you say that name?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I still don't think, like I said, you can get away with the whole... I don't think the music works for Wonder Woman, like the picture, like do. Like I'm like, this is like really epic music for just a picture. What are you doing? The scene where the Batmobile comes around and Superman's just standing there, and like I don't like that.
Do you not? I love that. And then he just bumps into him. Like,
yeah, no, I thought I was like
with the music.
No, it's like this is too much. I like it like when he's up in the sky and it's all climactic, but when it just turns the corner and I think it's Ben Affleck's like,
the Ben Affleck goes. Yeah, he does the face. I was
a bit like, this is a bit dumb. And then also, like I said, the Aquaman coming out of the
I can't defend that.
No,
all the logo. Lex has got all their logos designed. I was just like, they haven't even become superheroes yet, and you've already got all their logos designed.
Yeah.
Like,
but like I said, that's just minimal stuff which could still be in other praised Marvel movies, etc., which people look over.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I'm willing to say that I got turned around by this film, and I'm looking forward to watching the Ultimate Cut. But from what I've heard, the third act is still quite similar.
It's mainly the first two acts that are
exactly,
but the third act is still sort of the same.
Exactly, yeah. So that's where I'm still grappling with that in my mind. But like you said, it's Justice League.
But it makes a lot more like story threads a lot more understandable as well.
Yeah,
like the whole Batman branding thing with the killing and stuff like that.
Yeah,
that gets explained in the Ultimate Edition. You're like, okay, right, that makes more sense.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay. So that is my number one, Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice, Ultimate Edition. Controversial, yes. So we're gonna end it now with yours.
A completely different. Like we're just gonna take a different lane here now, guys. Okay, it's completely different. I could have changed this up with Apocalypse, but I just put this here for one reason, and it was just again comes down to that third act thing, and this is where the third act won me over in a film, and it's Kingsman: The Golden Circle.
No, God.
I don't know. Like I said, I was looking through this and I was like,
I can't agree with you on this one.
I know. It's like I said, I don't really have that much to defend it on. I can't say that like it's an amazing film or anything, But the pure reason this is here is just because, like, Cowboys and Aliens, X-Men Apocalypse, I was like, I can see the flaws and I can't excuse them kind of thing. And it's the Golden Circle. I see the flaws, and I was like halfway through the film, I was like, oh, I don't like this. I really like the first film. But it's just purely, there's just one moment in the end of it, which like is one of my favorite moments of being in the cinema. And that's why I was like, I have to give this film credit just for this, because coming out of it, I was just like, that was a bit ropey, but it still gave me this moment and I'll never forget it. And it's just the end battle scene where they go to, so if you haven't seen the film, it's the villain is sort of like a drug lord. They're operating off this like private island, and Taron Egerton's character and Colin Firth go there to confront them and stop the evil scheme, etc. And like the first film, they've kidnapped celebrities, and one of them is Elton John. And they have these dumb robotic dogs that like attack people. And the joke that just got me was just, again, Elton John in this film was just weird and dumb and had some stupid moments. Yeah. But for some reason, the joke where they had established that they register that Elton John is a friend, don't attack Elton. So when, I think it's like Colin Firth is then going to be attacked by one of these dogs, and just Elton John's face just comes in and Rocket Man starts blaring, and he goes like, Rocket Man.
Yeah.
It registers his face and goes, Elton, friend. For some reason, Craig will testify for this, I creased in the cinema. We just broke down with laughter. It was the most stupid thing I had ever seen in an action film, but I loved it. I was like, this is bizarre. And that's the only reason I give this film credit. Because I was like, that is hilarious. I was like, it's not, I get that it's completely dumb, completely stupid, but
I think that moment just washed over me because I was just so disinterested in what I was watching.
I can understand that. I would see that again in the Batman v Superman thing if I'm watching it going, oh, this is just adding to the ludicrousness of this, and I would saw that. But it just hit me so hard that it was my type of humor, and I was like, this is so silly and stupid. And then that just sums up my feelings of the film. You know, he's going to Glastonbury and, you know, he's inserting this tracking device into this woman. They're going to America and they've got, you know, whiskey and all the sort of like alcohol names.
The Statesman and all that.
But again, it's just, I just get on with the goofy and campiness of it. And I think that the first film does that a lot as well, but they sort of managed to balance it. But with this one, like I said, I do find that it is a flawed film, but I just enjoy the goofy silliness of it.
I think that was a problem for me, I think, because like I enjoy the silly and campiness of the first one, and I think it's executed really well. I just think with this one, they just took it to a whole new level, exaggeration.
Pedro Pascal with his laser whip and stuff
that's
like
what
that.
I mean. Like, it's not like, and the thing is, it's not like the Fast and Furious films where they're crazy and they know they're crazy. They know, like, these films are somewhat trying to be serious. And I thought the first one tiptoed that perfect balance between, you know, serious spy agent type of film, but a bit of campy zaniness. Yeah. And the second one just like, nah, let's just go full on weird. Like,
exactly, yeah. And that's again where and I agree with you. And that's what I mean. That's why I put it number one, because I was like, I think it is like a good rotten film for me, because I agree that it isn't great. It isn't perfect. But I just think that, like, don't be too harsh on it in the like taking it too seriously, etc. I think that's similar. I think it's like a 40, 50 odd %. It's not like dire, like 30s or 20s or anything.
Check it.
It is 51%.
51%.
Yeah, 51% on Rotten Tomatoes. So like I said, I just felt that, to me, some people might have been too harsh on it. I think, like I said, it's still a decent, fun film. I'm not saying that it is like a work of art or anything, but I just had fun with it. And it's just that Elton John moment, like, epitomized that to me. So just how I came out of Apocalypse and went, this is kind of flawed. I don't know what to make of this. Okay, well, it kind of was like a Saturday morning cartoon. It was fun. It was actiony. And that's what I thought with that. I was like, you know what? That Elton John thing was bizarre, but it's meant to be bizarre. And that's why I enjoyed it. It's meant to be silly. You got Saturday is playing when they're like firing all the guns at the end, and I enjoyed that. I enjoyed Julianne Moore's sort of like Poppy, this like, you know, crazy character that's kind of similar vein to, you know, Samuel L. Jackson in the first film. And you have the political element of it again with, you know, the idea that, you know, through drugs, people, you can see that they turn blue, etc. And then the president kind of, like dismisses his assistant or whatever because, they can see then she's like, oh, it's a stressful job, blah, blah, blah. She's taken, drugs to sort of alleviate the stress. And I kind of like that commentary as well. I thought that was fun. Like I said, I like Pedro Pascal in it. The Colin Firth stuff is a bit dumb that they have to like bring him back, and it's very transparent that they're like, we can't do this without him, and so they have this very like arbitrary reason for like how he comes back and stuff. But
yeah, that thing just
But again, I was just
complete for me. Just completely undermines his death in the first one.
Yeah, and I get that, and then but I'm also like, I don't know if you could have done it without him at the same time. So I was like, if you're gonna do it in a dumb, unbelievable, silly, goofy way, okay, I can kind of get it. And they did do it in a way I've enjoyed the storyline of him, like with the butterflies and everything. He has they try and bring some drama to the to the scenario, and that he sees that like the people who are betraying statesmen and that kind of stuff. So like I said, not perfect. I have fun with it. It's just the Elton John joke made me laugh, and it just made me like re-see the film as just the stupid, silly action fun it is. I really like Matthew Vaughn as a director. And, like I said, Kick-Ass, First Class, Kingsman, they're all above this film. But it's like I said, I just enjoy the crazy action of it. And it comes down to that third act. And that's what I was saying. I think a lot of these comic book films can fall under in the third act. Whereas for me, it actually saved the film because it was so fun. It was so silly. It was so filled with dumb action that I was willing to get on board with it and sort of just let everything sort of excuse the rest of the film. So, going from Batman v Superman to this, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could give it another shot, but I don't know. I think the thing is because I loved the first one so much. I think that's what hurts the most because I loved the first one so much. And it was such a good film, so fresh and original, something we hadn't really seen before. And then for the second one to be the stuff like we've always seen.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of,
Yeah, I get that. Like I said, I think go in with it just with like the idea of having fun and just like,
all right,
don't take it too seriously.
I might give it another shot.
Especially because The Kingsman is coming out some point.
Next year. Year. Right, so that is it. That's top 3 underrated. So we've given you people 6 films to watch. If you're feeling a bit bored.
6 very different films.
6 very different films. All of them available throughout different streaming services. So I'm sure you can find them about. Remember, guys, though, everything we've just talked about is just our opinions and none of it matters. So if you want, you can tell us to fuck off and you can not watch any of these films.
Be man babies, as you said earlier.
But we're going to sign off now because we're running a bit late. So where can the lovely folks find you, Dave?
You can catch me at David Oscar on Twitter, or you can catch me David Oscar 91 on Instagram, as well as all the other places I do content for.
Keeping up to date with Dave's reactions to Hollywood.
Yes, When sometimes I'm a bit ranty, sometimes I'm just a bit like pointing out the bizarre.
And pointing out the obvious at times as well.
Yes,
For people who need it.
Yeah, exactly,
you can find me on Twitter, where I also chat a lot of shit about the world and the crazy stuff that we're going through at the minute. But you can follow Capes, Cows and Masks on Twitter at Capes, Cows, Mask, and find us and like us on Facebook. And you can find this episode and all other episodes on Spotify, Anchor, and we're on Google Podcasts.
Hey.
So for all you Google people, we're on there now.
For Android lovers.
iPhone people, Apple people, bear with us. We're coming. We're coming to Apple. Still waiting. But you know what it's like with Apple. But until next time, guys, see you later.
Have a good one. And don't follow false gods.